Hey ho, let's talk about Sony destroying physical media, shall we? Today's video is going somewhere, I promise. And despite the backlog of subjects I'd rather talk about, could I get away with not discussing Sony's stated plan to ditch physical media? I really couldn't, but I'm tackling it from a different angle, certainly different from the angles that have already been taken. Because while I do totally agree that controlling what you can and can't own is still a relevant fear in the game industry, it's not the only one in play. And there's something my mind crept to immediately after the announcement was made. It was a thought involving cheese. Historically, I tend to buy pre-sliced cheese, because I can't cut the stuff without doing that thing where you get inevitably less straight and end up creating a weird lopsided block. You know, it gets just more triangular. And also, let's face it, I'm just lazy. Anyway, as of over a year ago, whenever I open a package of sliced cheese, I first have to go to my kitchen drawer and retrieve a special tool. A fish slicer. See, sliced cheese used to come packaged with thin paper dividers between them, and it turns out there was a very good reason for that, because they no longer come with paper dividers, and now I need that fucking fish slicer to peel the cheese away from itself, because it sticks together and inevitably comes out in broken clumps if you try to separate them by hand. There was a reason for those paper dividers. As we go forward, remember that we're talking about corporations today, and before now they would have worked extensively to get the least likely to fall apart packaging at the cheapest cost. What I'm driving at is, up until now, the material and design of packaged goods has tended to be inexpensive while remaining practical, because that is how industries tend to operate. That's what I mean when I say there was a reason something was put between the cheeses to avoid displeasing with the cheesy squeezes. It was the reason plastic bottles weren't so thin you had to be careful opening the lid so it doesn't get squeezed too hard and upchuck all over you. There was a reason paper drinks cups weren't so degradable that if you tried saving a drink for a day in one, it would get eaten through by whatever is in it. And there's a reason that bread has never before now been sold inside a glorified bag made of crepe paper. And you'll note I'm using the past tense here. Although some of the higher priced goods aren't yet built like something the big bad wolf could destroy with a fart, the rest of the landscape is pretty grim, and as we'll discuss, the encheapening is coming for the luxury bracket as well. In Britain, food production has become an increasingly despicable scam. Even as food prices have soared to record levels, the quality and the quantity of what you get for your money has dramatically reduced. All my life, beetroot came in packs of 4. Decades of life on this earth, and beetroot always came in packs of 4. You just wouldn't have thought of it back in my day. Beetroot in packs of 3, they always come in packs of 4. I am sounding more and more like my nan each day. And as much as I love my old nan, bless her, I feel it's almost a mercy that she never lived to see the day where beetroot came in packs of 3, not 4. One corner of the packaging scrunched in to try and hide what once was there, as if we wouldn't remember it, like we were always at war with Beetrootopia. A bag of crisps, meanwhile, has had so many crisps taken out of them over the past 5 years that if just a single one more disappears, we can rightly call them crisp sachets. As a final insult to that, crisps and snacks now proudly display how many calories the bags amount to in a pathetic attempt to convince you they're healthier than they were. No, there's just less than there were. On the subject of dressing this dog shit up, companies will no doubt try to tell you their reduced packaging efforts are environmentally driven and that's it. But I don't believe that. Not when the packaging has now become so cheaply made as to border on impractical, unviable, and in some cases illogical. I can't believe it when it's being done in conjunction with the reduce of the amount of goods that we get for our money. Plus, you know, if they cared about the environment so much, they wouldn't spend half their time fighting efforts to get them to do just that. The gradual reduction of items per product isn't an unknown phenomenon. It's been noticed and called out by many British pundits before, but the scale and audacity of the outright swindle being pulled off before our very eyes in real time is one of the most appalling things I've seen from this country's post-Brexit degradation. The ongoing grift of the UK food industry is what I think of when I hear that Sony will stop making physical discs for its games. Make no mistake, whatever excuses companies may peddle and whatever other motives may exist for doing it, a big reason why companies are thinning their box materials, making bag-like water bottles, siphoning the value out of their goods and otherwise skimping on as much production as possible is an extreme form of anti-customer economizing. Because you see, corporate greed has reached such an extreme that they've effectively run out of ways to make money by selling stuff, and all they have left is scraping money together by taking stuff. The game industry has been dreaming of an all-digital future almost as long as I've been working in games media. I remember it being a particularly hot-button issue in the very late 2000s. The PSP Go released in 2009, and it was Sony's first big experiment in diskless hardware. It didn't go all that well. Those in favour of the future Sony was nudging toward argued that an all-digital future would be good, actually, that the only reason digital games still cost the same as physical versions was because they were forced into price parity by evil retail chains like GameStop, and everything would be better once they threw off the shackles of these brick-and-mortar tyrants. Of course, most of us know better now, but it's really what a lot of people believed back then, and the industry loved to peddle that propaganda, but in reality, we've seen almost a reversal of that promise. While physical copies can still currently be bought secondhand and often go down in price, digital copies of those exact games can be price fixed forever, and it's not uncommon for a title to cost just as much as it did on launch day, years and years after the fact. Since 2009, game publishers have only further proven that they will never, ever pass their savings on to the customers. What's the difference between spontaneous human combustion and trickle-down economics? We pretty much accepted both were hoaxes before the end of the 1990s. Pass their savings on to the customer. That's not the point of savings for corporations, especially when, after a long period of financial success, these savings are the only option they have to convince shareholders the money's still snowballing. The removal of paper cheese dividers is for their benefit. Not mine, not yours. The produce is worse now, the price is higher now, and the difference has been pocketed by the big cheeses stacking the cheddar. Remember when the iPhone killed off the headphone jack? This was a fine example of how a company makes a phenomenal amount of money from a product and then starts dismantling that very product to make up for diminishing returns, literally stripping it for parts. We saw this with handheld video game consoles too. They were originally sold with chargers included, you know, because packing a machine with the power supply it needed to function was quite rightly seen as obligatory. Then, as the 2010s rolled on, this practice simply stopped. The point is, electronics used to all get their own power supplies, and now they have USB-C, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not arguing is an issue. In and of itself, it is, on paper, more convenient. Not any paper that's between cheese. But it's just a little micro example of how we're footing the bill for the product more and more. These petty and seemingly innocuous moves are the ones you've really got to pay attention to. The tech industry enjoyed massive amounts of financial success throughout the 2010s. Video games alone became media powerhouses during that era, and big publishers who'd spent 2 decades muscling their way into the business consolidated their power, exploited their intellectual property, and monetized the ever-spurting spunk out of every facet of the gaming experience. At the same time, these publishers' worth exploded, and investors, childlike emperors that they are, were thrilled to have a new fabled source of infinite money. But as we've discussed on this show many times, infinite money isn't real, and every year it got harder to keep the illusion going, especially when games had become so monetized there was nothing left to do but hike up the base price of things once we hit the 2020s, and then again later. The problem is, no matter how much you raise the ceiling by in one quarter, the shareholders will expect a higher ceiling next time. This is why we're seeing tens of thousands of layoffs across the industry, because when executives can't drag more money in, they have to falsify growth by keeping money from going out. We've gone over this capitalism. Why aren't you listening to me? Oh, and as usual, the executives will never do any of this by cutting their own massive salaries and bonuses. In short, this socio-economic system's price for explosive success is explosive expectation, and it's a price that customers and workers will end up paying. But the ceiling keeps raising, the expectation keeps exploding, and the childlike emperors will never be satisfied with more than enough. There is no such thing as enough in the corporate world, only a hunger for more and more and more and more. So what happens when you've monetized everything, raised all the prices, and laid everybody off? Well, for the first time in these executive parasites' lives, they've had to do the one thing they never imagined having to do. They've had to get creative. The death of physical media absolutely brings with it the attempted assassination of ownership, and that's an important subject to dissect. Since the early 2000s, Sony's talked of game purchases only giving us the right to access the material and not ownership of the product. It is not, however, the only subject to discuss here, nor is it so indicative of the desperate and frankly embarrassing position corporations are in right now. Oh, and yes, do take this to heart, corporations are in several major ways completely fucked as they continue pushing the lie of infinite company growth in an era where there's almost no room left to grow anymore. So it is that Enshittification was embraced across the market. Things that once offered value to the customer steadily losing that value so companies can continue making more money from something they already sold. Netflix used to be $10 a month and had pretty much everything on it. Amazon Prime Video was sold as ad-free media access, and now it plays ads on everything unless you pay even more money. Game Pass went from one of the hottest deals in all of video games to an empty shell of withdrawn promises that were then sold back in a nesting doll of tiered services. After that, Microsoft supported a genocide, which isn't part of what I'm talking about, but Microsoft very literally supports the mass murder of young children. Enshittification is mostly discussed in tech circles, but not only does it occur everywhere, it's occurring at a terrifyingly increased rate. The prices go up, the value goes down, and in an economic system designed to have no end point whatsoever, the gap between price and value will only ever stretch until it all breaks. In a past video, I think it was called When There's No More Room in Hell, something like that, I identified the overarching reason for why companies so hungrily tried to push NFTs as a thing, a hunger that has metamorphosed into the mass adoption of regurgitative AI. Corporations don't have anything left. They've strip-mined every industry, hollowed out every medium, and raised prices to such a degree that even necessities are becoming unaffordable. Executives have no ideas of their own, no longer want to pay people to have ideas, and have essentially hit the ceiling on the money they can make from the ideas they already sell. This is why you get tech moguls making utter asses out of themselves by trying to repackage existing goods and services as innovative new concepts. You know, like when Elon Musk laid out his brilliant plans to reinvent travel and all he did was describe fucking taxis, and god, wasn't there this dumbass company that thought it had been the first to invent the fucking vending machine? Anyway, this lack of new stuff to sell is exactly why NFTs were forced down our throats. It was a way to sell art that had already been sold and attempt to double dip on pretty much everything that could be represented by a meaningless token. It was almost a tacit admission that companies had run out of things to sell, because with NFTs they were trying to sell literally nothing. The generative AI is the NFT bus taken to a toxic new level. I've labelled alleged intelligence as plagiarism laundering before, because the techno-vampires running these glorified algorithms are doing just that. They've scraped every recorded form of human expression and information and fed it all to their false god, the mindless deity they call AI, so that it can vomit up collages of misappropriated material masquerading as intelligent responses. Alleged AI might be the most blatant way in which stolen goods have been sold back to the victims. It's definitely the largest scale example, considering the stolen material is everything and the victims are all of us. I've talked at length about AI elsewhere, I won't go over it all again, but it's important to understand exactly what NFTs and AI are doing in relation to that myth of corporate growth. Companies have run out of ideas. They are desperate to save money. We are in effect witnessing the ravenous march of what I'm going to call zombie capitalism, unless necro-capitalism focus tests well. It's a decaying stage of our socio-economic system where everything has been exploited to death and companies have nothing left to exploit but the corpses. It's a fitting term, I think, for an era in which movie studios are literally exploiting the dead, having stooped to robbing graves and resurrecting long-gone actors. It's so much easier, so much less investment to remind us of old stars than invest in building new ones. Pop culture nostalgia, the familiar faces of the dead, recognizable references, all cruel reminders of better times for an increasing number of people who weren't alive to see those days for themselves. And targeting that younger audience helps divorce the puppeted cadavers of yesteryear from their original contexts, reducing works of art to mere brands and people to property. No, sorry, I've never heard of The Thing. Anyway, check out this cute Funko Pop of a dog I got. I don't know if I've got time to dig into the UK's brand churning, but basically there are more product crossovers going on in grocery stores than Space Jam fucking 2. Love Hearts have always been a brand of sweets over here, but now they're also a brand of different sweets, shampoo, bath bombs, candles, and much, much more. Pickled onion Monster Munch is mayonnaise now. God is rotting. Wham bars are water. It doesn't end, because this is all zombie capitalism has now. Thoroughly bankrupt of new ideas, all they have is this, a meaningless soup of recognizable predictable logos, mashups that make no sense, a refusal of investment in anything new, and diminishing returns each time. After seeing so many of these wacky crossovers, the novelty has worn off like it has in Hollywood. They keep happening though because there's nothing left. There is only a dead horse, a fruit salad flavoured dead horse. I can't even find fruit salad sweets in the shops, but I can find fruit salad everything else. Everything except the fruit fucking salad, and I love fruit salads. You can at least mail order them. Don't ask me how I know that. Why don't you get your own fucking house in order? All of this shit is part of zombie capitalism's cocktail of symptoms. The complaints I made at the beginning of this episode may sound petty and minor at first. Hell, I'm sure some clever-ass commenter has made a great joke about how the fat person would be upset over food, but when you seriously look at what's going on, you all should be fucking outraged. To me, the pettiness of the cutbacks we're seeing is what makes them so outrageous. I mean, the post-boomer generations have been robbed of their ability to buy houses, afford rent, find stable employment, get an education without going into debt, and to top it all off, we can't even make a sandwich without a fish slicer for the fucking cheese anymore. We can't get a loaf of bread in some packaging that protects it from going stale. This situation is one vulgar kick up the anus to an already disenfranchised population. Over half a decade ago, I said capitalism wouldn't even provide the bread and circuses anymore, and I had no idea how fucking literal that would become. All the small-scale degradation is also just plain scary, because the fact companies are eating into practical, protective packaging shows you just how close to breaking point we are. They're scraping the dirt underneath the barrel right now and sacrificing what few quality standards still exist in the process. Executives are spinning plates in a desperate attempt to stave off the displeasure of their unsatiated shareholders. I've said desperate a lot in this episode, and I hate to overuse a word, but desperation is simply a perfect description of the executive class's current lot. This desperation has driven the corpo scum to increasingly ridiculous ways to steal back value from customers. I can just imagine the guy who remembered that cheese has paper dividers and the excited relief on his pathetic face. Ah! He screams in his office as the sweat falls in rivulets from his brow. Cheese paper! Take out the fucking cheese paper! Oh, the relief he must feel, how satisfied he must be that he earned his 2 million quid for the week, and how he must know deep down that all he's done by taking out the cheese paper is buy his lie a bit more time. Now the cheese paper's gone. There's only the cheese left, Derek. There's only the cheese left. Zombie capitalism is the era of widespread take-backs, and it's really sad that the ever-growing number of people younger than myself will never truly understand what's been taken from them. I never lived in a utopia, very far from it, but I was born in an age where a family could be supported by one person's job, where buying a house wasn't yet an impossible fantasy, where a bag of Monster Munch had more than 9 Monster Munch in it. For most of my life, video game hardware always came down in price the older it got. That was the way of things. Early adopters paid a premium for that early adoption, everyone else waited for an inevitable price drop. I refuse to not see it as anything other than egregious madness that game consoles are now going up in price the longer they're on the market. That's aberrant to me. That's glitch in the Matrix level shit. Something that should not be. That is how weird things are today when compared to what I've seen and witnessed and experienced for most of my fucking life. But of course, this is the new way of doing things. Price goes up, value goes down. The big things we used to have, the houses, the jobs, the affordable cost of living are all but gone now, and so the takers have moved on to claiming the little things. We truly are in an age where capitalism won't even provide the bread and circuses anymore because wheat costs money and the clowns will want to get paid. This past week, Sony didn't just announce that it was killing physical media. It also said that it was not planning to do what it's previously done and sell its next console at a loss. The PlayStation 6 is projected to cost over $1,000 to make, and Sony is going to make its customers eat every dollar of that financial hit. Where once we mocked Sony for charging $599 for a system, now we're looking at a fucking grand and then some as the starter price before time jacks it up. This follows news that the Steam machines are priced at over $1,000 as well, and how disgustingly fitting that AI is being blamed for the expensive hardware, since AI is taking the jobs people will need to pay for that shit. Gotta love AI, right? It's taking all our jobs, but at least it's making everything less affordable. Ha ha ha. It's funny because tech CEOs should all be lined up and fucking shot. Speaking of grand, how about Rockstar pretending Grand Theft Auto 6 will cost $80 when that's actually just the shell price and the real thing costs $100? How about that? How about that? It's almost as if raising the price of games twice since 2020 wasn't enough for this disgusting fucking industry, and that they've already burned through whatever time that bought them, so how the fuck are they going to keep the growth grift going for a few more years? Now, ever aching to dig deeper, publishers are smearing the tips of their dicks up and down the labia of $100 price tag, daring each other to stick it in first. Where does it end? That's what one wants to ask. When we've all been laid off, when food is too expensive, when rent takes whatever we can claw together. I mean, actually, that's pretty much now. But where does that end? Where does it end for video games, a luxury item increasingly pricing itself out of customers' hands because fewer and fewer people can afford them? Where does it end when the price is astronomical and the value is non-existent? Tempting as it is to ask this question, there's no point, because there is no end. There was never supposed to be an end for a lie that claimed money can keep on multiplying for all eternity. There are only increasingly desperate attempts to stretch reality to fit the lie, stretching and stretching and stretching. And it's as taut as it can go. For over a decade, I've talked about how completely unsustainable the game industry's trajectory was. I complained about the short-sighted focus on immediate gains rather than building a stable future. And I joke that I'm the Cassandra of video games often, as so many of my warnings were sneered at until they came true. But the fact is, it's not funny. It's sad that this miserable state of affairs was so easy to predict that I could see it coming from 10 years away, but nobody who could avert it cared to do so in all that time. Whether it was from a point of short-sighted greed, or a simple fuck you got mine, we're wearing golden parachutes attitude, where we are right now could have been stopped, and it wasn't. PlayStation won't make discs for the same reason Sainsbury's won't put paper dividers in cheese slices. They're feasting on corpses in the age of zombie capitalism. They're subsisting on the dregs, lurching along for whatever time they have left, fueled only by whatever petty cutbacks they can make. The metaphor's getting a bit jumbled up now, but, you know, I think I made my point. While making this, I had a sobering thought. About 10 years ago, I could have looked at this news about ditching physical media and made a fairly safe bet that Sony would walk it back. And when I had that thought, it struck me just how alien a world this is now. 10 years ago, game publishers gave enough of a shit about public perception that they might have deemed this a catastrophe. But the gaming world was a lot smaller back then, and we were all less conditioned back then to accept the absolutely unacceptable. For the past few years, the news cycle has just pushed the boundaries of what we should accept, of what we should expect. And with big tech companies taking their masks off, objectively making the world worse, showing us just how cruel and callous and evil they are, the envelope has been pushed so far beyond what a video game publisher should care about. Maybe there's a way they walk this shit back, but it is not the slam dunk prediction it would have been if I'd have made it in the good old days. Which, considering how shit those good old days were, really makes me want to cry. So yeah, it just got me thinking about how little exhibited care comes from corporate gaming now. The executive class is only getting more alienated, less able to relate to normal human beings. God, the video game industry is this is just depressing. I should have done the Dead Island video. At this point, that's become a walking myth. Videos don't walk, but you get what I mean. And it's way too much build for something that no one cares about. There is no hype for it. But anyway, that will do from me. This is Hi Steph saying bye, Steph, and thank God for me. And I'll be in Manchester wrestling on the 26th of this month, July 26th. I always forget to mention that in the videos when I've got a date coming up. But yeah, Pinfall Wrestling, if you look at pinfallwrestling.com, there's information on there. Anyway, I'm going to go now. Bye!